Your gift is not for you. So your job is to figure out what your gift is. And then once you've figured it out, we need you to share it with the world, because otherwise we don't get it. And you have no idea what the impact or the ripple effect could be.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's conversation. You may have been watching the podcast videos, but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you have ever gained value from our videos, from our conversations, it would mean so much to us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now, or even give us a like. And what that means, not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it also allows us to bring in more important guests for you to listen to, and you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's wonderful conversation. Welcome to the Pathways to Wellbeing. My name's Sophia Soul, of course, from Sacred You. With me today is a very wonderful and important guest, Suhaiba. Thank you for joining us, Suhaiba, on a great conversation about transforming your life.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to sharing what I've learned along my own journey.
You have had a very interesting journey, very, if I can say, male dominated. But what I'd love to start with is, would you like to tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are now?
Yes. So about a year ago today, I published a book on leadership for women, and it is based on the story of my life. I grew up with three brothers, two older, one younger, very sports oriented. So I was a tomboy through and an athlete, seasoned athlete. And then I worked in three male dominated industries in my career to date: men's college basketball, the NBA, and now I'm part of our family business, which is residential painting, and still very male dominated in that industry as well. And when I joined, my dad, still owner, working full time, two older brothers working full time, and then me, the little sister, and the daughter, and the youngest. So learning to navigate a leadership role as a woman and a young woman in a male dominated space came with some challenges. Thankfully, my mother's a very strong and confident woman and raised me to be the same way. So having gotten through all that, and then having my daughter get to end of high school, early college age, I'm an avid reader, as you can tell from behind me, and have been writing probably since I was little. But this is the book that came through. And until I published it, I didn't realize that my original why was to help my daughter and have her have an easier go at it when she's in her 20s and 30s and navigating the workforce. But after it came out, I realized how much of a need there still is for awareness around what it's really like for women to be in leadership positions in their own life and in the workforce, and what the stats are like around that. So now my goal is to help as many young and up and coming women, and those of us that are in the thick of it now, really get clear on, my word is authentic. So when I show up every day, I want to be me. And I don't want to have to pretend to be somebody else. I don't want to have to try to fit into a mold to make it work. I want to be able to be my true and authentic self. And that's the goal, is to empower and encourage as many other women to do the same in a world where sometimes that's not what they want from us.
Thank you so much for sharing it. Now, speaking of your book, do you have it with you?
I do. There it is. So it's called Like a Girl, because that was the story of my life. Don't do it like a girl. And it is 22 leadership lessons for women on the rise. So 22 was the number I wore on my jersey every time I played a sport. And it really just takes you, I didn't realize there were lessons at the time, because it starts with me being 4 and my mom putting me in gymnastics, and I was tiny and I was fearless. So it was the absolute perfect thing for me at that time. And just what I've learned over the years, looking back, oh, that was a lesson that was preparing me for the next thing that came, and that prepared me for the thing that came after that. So now in my late 40s, looking back on that, sharing the lessons, very short and sweet. So it's one lesson and one story, and then a little bit of actionable items. So I tease that when I finished, I'm like, oh, it's only 77 pages. And I said, no, it's only 77 pages. So it's a short read, packs a punch. And again, it's just a matter of really helping to encourage and empower women at any age and stage to reclaim what that personal and authentic leadership means to them so that they're being true to themselves and then sharing that with the world because we need everybody to be real, I think. Yeah.
We do, definitely. We do need everyone to be real. And just congratulations, first of all, on writing your book.
Thank you.
And also,
Thank you.
I just like to really honor you for taking that step because yes, we need women to be true to themselves, to be authentic, and to step into their roles as leaders in whatever part of life that they're in. Even if it's leadership within for ourselves, just in our own life, we could all definitely need some help with that, some guidance and things. So thank you for that. And I'd love to know what inspired you to really articulate, to identify and articulate the 5 steps of transformation.
It's interesting. So I tease that a lot of things just come to me and through me, and I can't take full credit for them. They go to God and the universe, or both, or however, whatever your faith and spiritual belief is. I believe in both God and the universe. And so this year, I always tease that people talk about your word for the year. And I thought I picked a word at the beginning of the year, and then a word picked me. So I had 2 things that kind of came through and really showed up for me this year. One was awareness. So I went through and got certified in 3 behavioral sciences, so DISC, motivators, and then emotional quotient. And in doing all of that studying, the emotional quotient was the one that I enjoyed the most. And it really is about awareness, self-awareness, and then social awareness. So awareness was the first thing that came to me. And then my other word of the year was flexibility. I'm learning to be more fluid with things, which goes against my natural style, but it was something else that needed to happen. And so I feel like I was towards the end of my training and was sitting and like I said, it just came to me that there are phases and stages of your life where you need to move to the next level, but that's going to be difficult. It can be scary. And these 5 things just came and I jotted them down on a scrap of paper. And then as a writer, I like to let things sit for a little while and marinate, as I call it. And then it developed more. The first one, if we're ready to dive in, is, like I said, the awareness and just being aware of the fact that, oh, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. So I think sometimes in life, especially as women, if you're a mother or a wife or my sister or an aunt, or even just being a really good friend, we get caught up in helping everyone else and we lose sight of who we are, where we are, what we want to accomplish or what we want to do or what we don't want to do anymore. And just having that level of awareness to check back in and realize that, you know what, I've outgrown this and that's okay. Or, you know, this is no longer working for me or I need to make a shift here. That's where it all started. And so the 5 words are awareness, enough. And when I say enough, like I've had enough. Like some people call it rock bottom. I actually consider it like the exhale moment where you realize that, okay, I've had enough of this and it's time to exhale and let it go and figure out what can I replace this with. And then from there, it goes into grace, which I think, and I found, and I know I speak from personal experience, and I always tease it, like even with the book, walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time still. It's really hard sometimes for us to give ourselves the grace that we deserve when we feel like we didn't live up to what we were supposed to do, or we made a decision that turned out not to be what we thought it was going to be. I think with, like I said, friends and family, especially your best friend, you're really good at giving grace. But with ourselves, sometimes we really struggle there. And until you can do that, it's hard to get to that next level, which is the commitment and the consistency to make a change and have something different and get to what the final stage is for me is considered that transformation of I'm here now. I don't want to be here anymore. It's going to take a little work. And then you get to the other side of it. So it just all came through and I captured it. And then the goal, and this is me jumping through the fear. And again, like with the book, when I had to hit yes on the final version to send to the printer, I'm like, is this really any good? Is anybody going to actually get any value out of this? So this is me again, pushing through the fear and realizing that this might be helpful to somebody else. So let me share it with the world and not keep it to myself.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing it. And your book is available on your website?
It is, or Amazon, both places. Yep.
Yep. So we will be putting your links below this video or audio. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast, please do click on the links and check out your book. Check out this wonderful book. So thank you for sharing that. I'd love to know, Suhaiba, we're talking about awareness, which is your first step. What advice would you give to someone who feels a little bit stuck, and especially at the awareness and not aware, or they may be lost, they may be feeling lost in themselves or in their environment, wherever they are? What advice would you give?
So for me, and again, this is something that I've been paying attention to for the last couple of years, is the energy. So I feel like in my life, there's good energy and there's good tired at the end of the day when you felt like you've been productive and you've done things that are within your kind of sweet spot and your superpowers and you've gotten to use them. And then there's the energy that absolutely just drains you for those tasks or those people. And so from first step is like checking in with yourself. If you're exhausted all the time, it's probably because something's off. And so paying attention to the energy, like I said, I'm happy to be good tired at the end of the day. I don't want to be drained and I don't want to feel like I've just, the life got sucked out of me. The other thing I think, and I wrote a piece about this years ago, is sometimes it's easy to start to veer off the path slowly and gradually and not realize that you're lost in the woods until you look up and there's just trees and there's no anymore. Sometimes checking in with somebody that you really know and love and trust is helpful. If you're and being willing to accept their honest answer as to, I think sometimes we're the last to see it because we're stuck living it every day, but the people that are close to you can sometimes see, yeah, you don't seem quite like yourself these days, or you don't feel like the energy and your happiness are really coming through. So just really doing that check-in. I think the other thing I've noticed a couple of times this year in particular too, in talking with friends, and again, I have a girlfriend who I'm accountability buddies with. When someone's face lights up when they're talking about something, that's what they're supposed to be doing. And so paying attention to those moments and those things that light you up, and even if they feel like they're not quite in the middle of, so like the book was off to the right of what I had been doing leading up to finishing it and publishing it. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Because I work in my family business. I have a consulting business that's centered around helping contractors with systems and processes to run smoother business. And then the book came, and it's for leadership for women, which is a whole nother thing. But for me, right now at this point in my life, that's what I know I'm supposed to be doing. And following that is really important when you do feel it. So check in with yourself, ask somebody you really love and trust, and ask them to be gentle with you, but also be honest with you. And sometimes we know it and we're just trying to avoid seeing it. So just really seeing and being honest with yourself as to, is this really where I want it to be right now at this point in my life? Or is there something that I need to shine a spotlight on and see if I can make an adjustment to be in a better place?
Thank you for sharing that. And I really hear you. Really hear you, especially with following what you're passionate about, really getting in touch with what brings you joy. That would certainly help people to just to become a little bit more aware of who they are and what's around them. So thank you so much for sharing that. And with you personally, your next step, we're talking about enough, especially for those who have just had enough. How have you maintained your consistency? And would you like to share any steps that you've taken in your life when you've reached that enough level?
So a very big one and personal, but it's all good because that's the point, is with the kind of the end of my marriage. So I'm divorced now and have been and we actually are very in a much better place in co-parenting, from a place that's much healthier for all of us. But I tried and tried and tried to make something work that I just knew wasn't going to fit anymore. So we started like this and then we went like that, and there was no coming back together. I think sometimes, and I'm a Taurus, so I can be stubborn. You pick a path and you're like, no, I got to stick with it. I chose this path. It is what it is. I got to stay on it. And sometimes, actually, I think the kind of ironic thing is the only thing that's constant is change. And we don't always want to acknowledge that. So that was a big enough moment for me when I realized that this really isn't going to work and allow me to be the best version of me anymore in this form. So my ex and I still have a relationship, but it's not the same as it was when we were married. And that's healthier for me. It's healthier for my daughter. It's probably healthier for him. And it's allowed me to, again, like I said, become my authentic self again and not try to be something that doesn't really work with who I was at 25 and who I was at 30 and who I was at 35 and who I am now are very different people. And I think sometimes endings are necessary to start a new beginning. And people are so afraid to let go that they miss the opportunity that's presenting itself moving forward. So is this where I expect it to be at this point in my life? No, but it's also, like I said, a much happier and healthier place for me to be, for me to do what I was sent here to do. Just finally acknowledging that this past year, the lovely phase of perimenopause and menopause, I've never had an issue with weight in my life. And I know there are a lot of people that have struggled with that. And I empathize with you. And my weight's gone up. And if you want to gain weight and not notice, wear stretchy pants for a year because it's the pandemic and you're not going anywhere. Nobody's going to see you and you won't notice that your regular pants don't button anymore. But again, realizing that, okay, enough already. Like I need to do something about this. But until you get to that point, and nobody can do it for you, you have to come to terms with it on your own. But until you get to that point, it's hard to make the next step to get to the other side of things.
Thank you for sharing that. And I hear you till you get to that point. And I think a lot of people, especially women, experience that during the pandemic, that you're wearing some clothes beforehand and then at the end you can go back out to work and stuff and your clothes don't fit you anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you for that. And what about grace? So what about grace? Well, can you share a moment when grace played a role, a pivotal role in overcoming challenges?
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of like linchpin in the middle of all of this that we don't think about very much. And I think I know for myself, I'm very hard on myself. And if I set out to do something, I'm going to do it. I went into a marriage happy as a clam and we were in a good place. Didn't believe in divorce with my parents. My parents have been together 52 years now, maybe. Both sets of grandparents were married for life. I had two great aunts and uncles that were married for life. So for me, marriage was for life. And then I got to the point where I realized this isn't what's best for me anymore. But I think we're really hard on ourselves and we feel guilty that, oh, I should have been able to figure out how to make this work. Or even like with the weight gain, you feel guilty that you allowed yourself to gain weight without noticing it, or you allowed a relationship to get to a point where it's not a good fit both ways anymore without realizing it. And we're human. And until you can give yourself the grace to say, I think it was Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. So sometimes you don't know any better. But when you have that realization and you get to the point where, okay, this is enough of this and I need to make a shift, then again, taking that deep breath and exhaling and giving yourself the same grace you would give to a little kid who made a mistake or a stranger or your best friend, and just allowing yourself, like I said, we're human. Things happen and you can't really plan and control everything in life, especially when other people are involved. I think it's really critical to have that moment where you forgive yourself and say, I did the best I could with what I had, and now I realize that I can do better. So I'm going to take a deep breath, let it go, and then move into, okay, how do I start this shift to something new, something different, and something that's more aligned with where I am right now and who I want to be tomorrow.
But then you certainly do need to be kind to yourself, to have to give yourself that period, that grace in whatever you're doing. Thank you for sharing that. It must have been challenging, interesting working in a male-dominated industries and having that impact you on your leadership and your perspective on how to be a leader within your own life. So how has that really shaped your whole life working with and growing up with?
It's interesting because I think in my early years and younger years, for me, it was just all about keeping up with the brothers. So I was very like adamant that I can do this too. And I think at certain phases in my life, like I said, got married, had a daughter, joined the family business, and there's this ebb and flow, I think, of losing your voice a little bit when you're in a space where you're the only one. So that's the real challenge. I actually think Malcolm Gladwell, I just saw a clip of him where he said if there's only one woman in the room, it's really hard for her to be herself and to be heard. If there's two women in the room, it's still hard. But once you get to three, then you have this little pack, and then people feel like, okay, there's enough of us to where we can be ourselves and we can make sure we're heard. So there were definitely phases where I lost my voice and was quiet when I shouldn't have been, or it didn't challenging as well. There's a report on 30 totally random and non-legitimate reasons why women aren't fit for leadership roles, and they make zero sense. Like I said, they're completely not legitimate. If a man speaks up, he's being assertive. If a woman speaks up, she's being aggressive, or she's being bossy, or she's being pushy. So there's all these nuances that, and again, part of the book is the awareness. So it's for women, but I also tease that smart men will read it and realize what it's like to be a woman in a male dominated space, and maybe have some allyship and make some space to ensure that the women are heard. But there are a lot of challenges you face that are very subtle, and you're so used to them because of the way the society has been navigating through it for the last 100 years, that just make it hard. And sometimes I have to repeat myself. And sometimes when I know I'm right, like getting through can still be a challenge because there are these kind of subconscious and unconscious biases that we have around women in leadership, and especially if you're in a space that's dominated by men. Or I was teasing someone that my mom loves, she's a math person, she loved math, and I was a science person, I love science. I never knew STEM was an issue for women because I wanted to major in biology. She said, great, go for it. So there was never this, oh, you can't do that. But there are just a lot of challenges, unfortunately, that women still face around where we're seen to fit in well in society and in the workforce and what we can bring to the table. But the interesting thing is the facts behind women in leadership, everybody does better when there are more women involved and when there are more women at higher levels in companies. Like literally revenue is better when you have more women in leadership roles than when it's male dominated. So it's been interesting to dive deeper into that and navigate that and share what I've learned to encourage. Like I see it, I always tease that it's very hard to be the first, especially if you're the only one, but somebody's got to do it. And that may give someone else the courage to step up and step into a leadership role as well. That's the goal.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's so true. It's having that courage to step up into the leadership role, and also having that courage to own your own voice, that we all have a voice. It is challenging being a woman because we still live in a male-dominated world, and everything is so much more easier as such for men. But when we really step into our power and own our voice, then things can change. And it takes women like you. So I'd just like to honour you for being a woman and owning that, to really owning who you are. So thank you. And while you're writing your book, Like a Girl, with as well as everything else you were doing in your life, what was the most surprising lesson that you discovered?
So my favorite one of all, and I tease that I'm still like a work in progress, is about trusting your gut and women's intuition. And I tease that that's the only chapter that's not really for men. So women's intuition is real. I think unfortunately a lot of times in society, the world tries to talk us out of it. But the bio nerd in me also, your body reacts faster than your brain can react. So that first initial gut feeling you have in your body is usually accurate. And then your brain catches up and tries to talk you out of it. So I think a lot of times, and I've been there myself, I've never had a time where I've trusted my gut and it's gone wrong. I have had times where I've not listened to that little voice and then I've regretted it on the other side. But I think, again, it goes back to awareness and being able to tune in and figure out what that looks like for you. So mine is like a quiet little voice, and she's not very loud. Sometimes she's kind enough and she repeats herself twice. So I actually had it happen in end of October. I was supposed to go to a conference in Florida, and it was when the hurricane was coming through, and nobody knew. I think it was still a hurricane. I think it was still a Category 5 on Sunday, and I was supposed to leave on Tuesday for this conference. And they kept saying, "Oh, it's not going to hit this side of Florida." I'm like, "Are you God? Can you really predict that we're going to be okay on the other side of it?" Because At the time, it was supposed to go across the whole state. And inside that little voice on Sunday said, don't do it, don't go. And I'm like, I already paid for the ticket. I already booked the conference and paid for that. I have the hotel room. It's probably too close to the deadline to cancel and not get charged a fee. So like my brain kicked in and started giving me all these reasons why canceling was not a good idea because I already spent this money. When she came back through again, she said, don't go. And so I went back to my computer. I said, all right, if I can cancel everything, then I'm going to cancel everything. So plane ticket, cancel, full credit, like not a refund, but I have a credit for another flight. Called the hotel and I said, I understand it's short notice. You might have to charge. No, there's a hurricane coming. We're not going to charge you for anything. So they canceled the hotel completely. The conference ended up doing a refund minus like the service fees so it didn't really cost, it cost me $50 to not go. But on Monday morning when I woke up, I felt such this like relief, like this weight had been lifted because I'd listened. And now I wasn't stressed about flying into ahead of a hurricane and then having to worry about, am I going to be able to get back out after the hurricane hit? And how bad is it really going to be? So that trust your gut and that awareness and intuition is a really big one. I think sometimes we brush it off too quickly and too easily when it's really the more in tune you get, the more you can, I think, be prepared and avoid some issues by just listening to that little inner voice.
Totally agree with you. Totally, you're speaking my language. To really listen to your intuition makes such a powerful life, powerful way of life. And do you have any other tips, any other practices that you experience that you can share with our listeners on how it's really to step into your leadership, to step into that role of being a woman and owning your own voice?
The other one, it's interesting because I did a talk at my daughter's alma mater, her high school, a couple weeks ago. And one of the other lessons that I shared with them, so they're all in upper school, some of them getting ready to go off to college next year. And the title of that talk is You Are the Leader of Your Life. So getting them to realize that, yes, you've been at home with mom and dad or whatever your family dynamic looks like for 18 years. But when you get to college, that's really when you come into your own and get to shape and decide what that looks like for you. So the Just Say Yes chapter is one also that I think is really important. And I shared a stat with them that for most women, we won't apply for a job or a position or kind of take up a role if we don't feel like we're 100% qualified for the role. And men, 60% is enough for them. They figure, oh, I'll learn the rest on the job. So the point of the Just Say Yes chapter is really, especially when somebody else sees something in you that you haven't recognized yet, which has happened several times in my life, in my career, say yes and do it. And what I shared with the girls, and I have to continue to remind myself, is there's hardly anything in life that you're ever 100% prepared for, especially if you've never done it before. Like, how could you ever be 100% prepared? So to not do something because you feel like, and we do this a lot, I think, unfortunately, to ourselves, is, oh, I'm not. I did it the other day. I filled out a form online and what's your area of expertise and what qualifies you to talk about this topic? And then I'm like, I almost hit cancel and never mind, I'm not signing up because I'm not a PhD. And then my brain said, no, you've got enough experience and enough expertise to shed some light and share some helpful information. So being willing to put yourself out there. And again, it goes back to the first chapter is be fearless. And so fear is a matter of taking a deep breath and exhaling and then moving. So that's why I tell everybody breathe and then move through it. So you acknowledge it, you breathe, you move through it, and then just say yes. And and I remember this from my college days, most of what you learn in school, until you literally put it into practice somewhere, it doesn't really like stick and register. So most of what you end up needing, you learn on the job. And you have a brain, you have the capacity to grow and challenge yourself. So just not letting fear stop you from doing something because you feel like I'm not 100% ready yet is another big thing that I focus on with the leadership stuff.
And trusting in it. But even if you feel that you're not totally ready, like yourself, you can push yourself a little bit and step into those possibilities. You know, and go and be a speaker in whatever it is, or do whatever that you want to do, but don't yet quite have the courage. and stuff. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up our conversation today?
I think, and you just said it, courage is really the big word. So for me, public speaking was like an absolute no, never going to happen until I got roped into it. And I still don't love it, but I know that it's where I need to be and what I need to be doing to make the biggest impact with the message that I have to share. So your gift is not for you. So your job is to figure out what your gift is. And then once you've figured it out, we need you to share it with the world because otherwise we don't get it and you have no idea what the impact or the ripple effect could be in you encouraging someone else to have the courage to the kind of women my age, one of the things we work through is what's your big audacious goal? So we all have one and we may think of it as silly, depending on what it is, but it's yours for a reason. And being able to acknowledge and recognize that and then do the work to make it a reality and share it with the world. And that could be a small population of people or it could be the entire world. But sharing it is really critical for all of us to reach our full potential and to leave the impact that we were meant to leave. So I think everybody is meant to. I tease everyone's a rock star. It just depends on the size of your stage. So we all have something that we were sent here with that we're supposed to share, and we have to have the courage to do that.
I love that. Everyone's a rock star. Depends on the size of your stage. That's all. Even if it's being a rock star within your own life and your own community. Thank you. And just one other quick thing, if I can ask you, Suhaiba, is how do you encourage other people to tap into that rock star?
I think it depends. So like I said, have now launched a whole new website. So that's I'm getting ready to write down all my accomplishments for this year because that's one of the other chapters in my book is to celebrate everything. We only want to celebrate these like big goals, but all these little things that have to happen along the way are worth celebrating as well. So if you go to the girl and then the number 22.com, that's my website that has everything to do with the book and the leadership and the support that I have for women. And sometimes, like I said, I don't know if we were on or off camera when we talked about this, just having an accountability buddy. So I've had two this year really helps you to push through that last little hurdle of fear and get over it and do what it is that, the idea came to you for a reason. So having somebody that you can trust could be a friend, could be a family member. I always tell people, don't tell the whole world what your big idea is because 99% of them won't get it and they'll tell you're crazy. But if you pick one or two people that you know well and that you trust and team up as humans, we always have the best intentions, but it's hard sometimes to really do anything on your. So I had support along the way with everything that I've done. My mom has always been the biggest supporter in the background for me, encouraging me to get through things and just do it, or if you start it, finish it. But yeah, so there's lots of resources on my website, and you can join an accountability group if you're looking into having a team of women to work through things with and encourage each other. Or, like I said, find your own accountability buddy and set the goal and set a deadline. And that's my superpower is consistency. So I'm really good at once I set my mind on something, I'm going to finish it. And again, that's part of that whole transformation process is making the commitment and then being consistent, but realizing that you're going to have an off day or an off week somewhere in there. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to quit. It just means you have to get back up and get back onto track and keep moving forward.
I mean, yes, we all do have those off weeks or off days, and that is okay. Just to realize that, but definitely needing an accountability partner or definitely having an accountability partner certainly helps. So people can, for those who are listening or watching, do click on the links below and connect with Suhaiba, especially if you want to know more about being like a girl, stepping into your leadership possibilities, your leadership potential. And if you're looking for an accountability partner, we've got one right here. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So it has been a pleasure, an honor. I will definitely be checking out your website and checking out your book because like we've talked about, we can be leaders in any part of our life, even if it's just within our own life.
Yeah. That's the most important place to start, especially for us girls and women, is making sure that you are the leader of your life.
Thank you. It's been an honor, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining in this informative discussion with Suhaiba. To know more about stepping into your own power and becoming a leader in your life, in your family, in your work situations, even in your community, do reach out to Suhaiba by clicking on the links below. If you have enjoyed today's conversation, please show your support by hitting that subscribe button, giving us a like, or sharing this episode with someone else who may benefit. Remember, you can explore more resources for personal growth and connection at www.sacredyou, that's the letter U, .love. Now is your time to own your own power, become your own leader, be that girl, be the woman that you are meant to be. Have a beautiful day wherever you are, and we will see you next time.